Title: Hiding in the backseat to surprise my son seemed fun, until I saw the mysterious figure in the passenger seat. All I wanted was to see his face. That goofy, surprised smile when his mom jumps out of the backseat after his long shift at the diner. A stupid, harmless prank. I held my breath, smiling in the dark as he got in. But my smile froze when someone else slid into the passenger seat. I didn't recognize their silhouette. I didn't recognize their voice. And I definitely didn't recognize the son I thought I knew in the chillingly calm way he answered their question. No one followed us. We're clear.
Hey, story lover. Welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go.
My name is Carol Hill, and that was the moment my world tilted off its axis. Lying on the floor of my son Tyler's beat-up sedan, the smell of stale coffee and worn upholstery filling my nostrils, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The innocent prank I'd planned just seconds before, a simple jump scare to break the monotony of his late-night shift, had curdled into a cold, paralyzing dread. My phone, the very device I was going to use to record his priceless reaction, was in my purse. And my purse was on the front seat, a mere arm's length from the stranger whose presence had sucked all the air out of the car. The engine turned over, its familiar rumble now sounding like a countdown to something terrible. We pulled out of the diner's parking lot. I stayed completely still, my cheek pressed against the rough floor mat, every muscle screaming. Who was this person? And what did Tyler mean we're clear? Clear of what? Through the tiny gap between the passenger seat and the door, I could just make out a profile. A man, sharp-jawed, wearing a dark jacket. He hadn't said another word. The silence was worse than shouting. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with unspoken agreements I couldn't begin to comprehend. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to rewind time, back to an hour ago when this seemed like a brilliant idea. Tyler had been distant lately, buried in his online world, his coding projects. I thought this silly prank would reconnect us, a shared laugh to remind him I was still his mom, not just the woman who left meals in the microwave. Now, I was an unwilling witness to a side of my son that was a complete stranger to me. This wasn't my Tyler, the boy who used to build spaceships out of cardboard boxes. The driver of this car was a man with secrets, and I was trapped in the dark with them. I knew this ride would end somewhere, and the not knowing, the destination, the purpose, the danger, was a special kind of torment. But I also knew one thing with chilling certainty. I couldn't let them find me. My discovery wouldn't just ruin a prank, it could end everything. The stranger finally spoke again, his voice a low murmur that barely carried over the hum of the tires on the asphalt. Did you get it? I held my breath. Tyler's reply was clipped, professional. It's secure. The transfer is prepped for the final handshake. Transfer handshake. It sounded like dialogue from a spy movie. My mind raced through horrifying possibilities. Drugs, weapons, stolen information. The man in the passenger seat, who I'd later learn was called Nicholas Hall, shifted in his seat. I heard the faint crinkle of a material, like a map or a blueprint, being unfolded on the dashboard. The deadline is 300, Nicholas stated, not asked. No room for error, you know the stakes. I know the stakes, Tyler shot back, a hard edge in his voice I'd never heard before. It was the voice of a man, not a boy. The voice of someone who had weighed risks and accepted them. I risked a peek. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, I saw Tyler's hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. His face was a mask of concentration. This wasn't a joyride. This was a mission. And the further we drove, away from the familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood and toward the industrial outskirts of the city, the more I understood that my son was in over his head. But was he a victim or a willing participant? The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, it pointed to the latter, and that truth was a shard of ice in my gut. A memory flashed in my mind. Tyler, aged 10, meticulously building a complex Lego castle, refusing to look at the instructions. I can see how it works, Mom, he'd said, his brow furrowed in focus. I just have to build it my way. He'd always had that intensity, that drive to solve puzzles no one else could. Had that innocent determination been twisted into this? This clandestine meeting, this talk of deadlines and stakes. Suddenly, the car swerved. My body slid across the floor, my head bumping softly against the back of the driver's seat. Tyler cursed under his breath. "What was that?" Nicholas asked, his voice sharp. "Nothing, pothole," Tyler lied smoothly. But I knew what happened. He dropped his phone. It had slipped from the center console and was now lying on the floor mere inches from my face. Its screen lit up. I could see the reflection of Tyler's eyes in the rearview mirror as he glanced down, contemplating reaching for it. My heart stopped. If he looked too closely, if he reached down too far, he would see me. Time seemed to stretch into an eternity. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged in my ears. "Don't look, Tyler. Please don't look." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of the old Tyler in his eyes before his focus snapped back to the road. "I'll get it later," he said. The moment passed. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, the terror leaving me shaky and nauseous. They were talking about a package, something digital that was worth more than I made in 10 years. They weren't criminals in the way I understood it. They were something else, something new and far more dangerous, and they were almost there. The car finally rolled to a stop in a desolate landscape of rust and concrete, a long-abandoned tech park. The only sign of life was a single, hulking warehouse, a faint, poolsing blue light emanating from its grimy upper windows. "We're here," Nicholas said, and the metallic clink of something being placed on the dashboard sent a fresh wave of fear through me. It was the sound of purpose. I heard both front doors open and then slam shut. A moment later, the car's locks clicked down with an automated finality. I was entombed. Panic flared, hot and immediate. I pushed myself up, my joints aching, and fumbled in the dark for the door handle. Locked, the other side. Locked, my mind reeled. This was it. I was going to be stuck here until they came back, if they came back. Then I remembered, the rear passenger side door. Tyler had complained about it for weeks. The child lock was broken. My fingers scrambled for the handle, clumsy with desperation. I pulled. A soft click. It opened. Cool night air washed over my face, and for a second I just breathed it in, the sweet relief of freedom. But what now? Run? Call the police and tell them what? That my son was in a scary building with a strange man talking about code. No, I couldn't leave him. Whatever mess he was in, he was still my son. Peering out, I saw Tyler and Nicholas disappear through a small side entrance of the warehouse. I had to know. I had to understand. Taking a deep breath, I slipped out of the car, my sneakers silent on the cracked pavement, and followed them into the belly of the beast. The inside wasn't dark and empty. It was a cavernous space, humming with the electric thrum of dozens of high-end computer servers. Banks of monitors cast an eerie blue glow on the faces of about 20 other young men and women, all around Tyler's age. Their fingers flew across keyboards, their eyes locked on cascading lines of code. It wasn't a hideout. It was a battlefield, a digital arena. This was the competition. At the center of the room stood a woman, impeccably dressed, observing the chaos with an unnerving calm. She looked more like a university dean than a crime boss. She addressed the room, her voice cutting through the clicking of keyboards. "Welcome to the final stage. The client's mainframe is live. The first team to bypass the security, retrieve the data package, and escape the ghost protocol wins the contract. The rest of you walk away with nothing. As you know, failure is not an option." Her name was Barbara Gonzalez, and the aura of absolute authority around her was terrifying. This wasn't just a game. This was cutthroat. A high-stakes, illegal corporate espionage trial by fire, and Tyler was a finalist. I watched from behind a stack of servers as he and Nicholas took their station, their faces illuminated by the screen. I saw the intensity on my son's face again, the same look he had with his Lego castle, but this time it was sharpened by a dangerous ambition. I had to get him out. I started to back away, planning to find a way to trigger a fire alarm, create any kind of diversion. But as I moved, my foot caught on a loose cable. I stumbled, knocking over a metal trash can with a deafening clang. Every head in the room snapped in my direction. The furious clicking of keyboards stopped. Absolute silence. Tyler's eyes found mine across the vast room, and his face went white with shock. The mask of the cool, calm professional shattered, replaced by the terrified look of a boy caught in the act. Barbara Gonzalez's gaze locked onto me. It was cold, analytical. Well, she said, a thin, cruel smile playing on her lips. It seems we have an uninvited guest. Nicholas, deal with the liability. Nicholas started toward me, his expression unreadable. But Tyler was faster. He shot up from his chair, positioning himself between me and the advancing man. No, he said, his voice shaking but firm. Leave her alone, she's with me. Barbara laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. How sentimental. You brought your mother to a job interview, Tyler. This is a competition with rules, and the first rule is no loose ends. She gestured to two other grim-faced competitors. Secure them, they're disqualified. My son, the brilliant boy who could solve any puzzle, was trapped. But as they cornered us, I saw that familiar spark ignite in his eyes. The look that said, I can see how it works. I just have to do it my way. Wait, Tyler yelled, holding up his hands. His eyes weren't on Barbara or Nicholas. They were on the main projection screen, which displayed a complex, rotating schematic of the target mainframe. You need me, he said, his voice gaining confidence. Look at Node 7, it's a feedback trap. The Ghost protocol isn't a defense, it's a data wiper. The first team to breach it will lose everything and fry their own system. You're sending them all into a slaughterhouse. Barbara's smile faltered. She squinted at the screen. The other teams, frozen by the drama, now stared at their own monitors, seeing the flaw Tyler had exposed. He had seen the one detail everyone else missed. I can bypass it, Tyler said, his gaze finally meeting Barbara's. I can get you your package, but my mother walks out of here right now, untouched. That's the deal. A tense silence descended upon the warehouse. It was a high-stakes gamble, a bluff played with the only cards he had, his talent and my life. Barbara studied him, her eyes weighing the value of the data against the inconvenience of a witness. I could see the cold calculation on her face. My son hadn't just stumbled into a secret life. He had reached its apex, and he was using his power not to win, but to save me. Fine, she finally conceded, a flicker of something that might have been respect in her eyes. Get it done, and then you both disappear. Tyler gave me one quick, desperate look. Go, I didn't hesitate. I turned and walked, not ran, toward the door, feeling the weight of every stare on my back. I didn't look back until I was outside, the cool night air once again a shock to my system. I made it to the car, my legs trembling, and collapsed into the driver's seat. 10 agonizing minutes later, Tyler burst out of the warehouse door and sprinted to the car, jumping into the passenger seat. Go now, he yelled. I slammed the car into drive and peeled out of that industrial graveyard, not looking back. The drive home was a blur of silence, a chasm of unspoken words, questions, and fears between us. When we finally pulled into our own driveway, the familiar sight of our quiet suburban home felt like a scene from another lifetime. It was over. We were safe. At least that's what I thought. Later that night, as I sat in the dark kitchen, unable to sleep, a soft chime came from Tyler's laptop in the living room. I walked over and looked at the screen. It was an encrypted message, but the sender's name was clear. Barbara Gonzalez. The message was simple. You have talent, Tyler, a shame to waste it. Round 2 begins next month. I'll be in touch. My blood ran cold. He hadn't escaped. He had only proven his value. We weren't out of the game. We had just been moved to a new, more dangerous board. My son's secret life wasn't over. It was just getting started. And now I was a part of it too.